Hi there, Chris Stokes from Custom Fitness Personal Training Studio, your home for health and wellness information and everything else. Today we're talking about the first two things to start to go as we age. Now that age and can be very broadly interpreted. It could be, as young as 30 or even less sometimes. But definitely as we get into really our 40s, our 50s, our 60s and on, there's two areas physically that we start to diminish in that really we don't have to. So the first one is balance and the second one is flexibility. Balance wise, you may notice that it's just not quite as easy to stay steady as it used to be. It could be that you don't quite put your pants on one leg at a time anymore standing up. Instead, you sit down to put them on one leg at a time. Hopefully that's the way we're going. So if you're trying to do things that are balance challenging and you notice that they're causing a problem, that may be an area that you're lacking in. Now the second one is flexibility. So flexibility can come in a range of areas. I mean, you're talking flexible from head to toe. So anything from not being able to bend over and tie your shoe well to not being able to turn your head fully in the car or having to turn your whole body because your neck doesn't turn as well. There's a lot there. I even had a client one time who had trouble with inflexibility in the tendons and ligaments in her spine, which caused her to not be able to bend forward or move backward very easily. So we had to work with that a little bit to build that back. So basically the rule is still the same as it always has been. If you don't use it, you'll lose it. My mom has been a kindergarten teacher for over 30 years, and I can tell you that she can still sit on the floor and stand back up with no problem. I won't give you her age, but she's definitely over 30. And so as she's getting down and up, that's something that a lot of people find impressive. Even people my age will watch her do that and think, wow, how does she do that? Think about it. I mean, really, the fact is that after the age of 30, when we're done having kids and all these kinds of things, maybe you went a little further than that, but after we get done with that phase of our lives, we really don't get on the floor much, right? The goal is to stay in a chair or on a bed and not ever to get in the floor. Well, the problem with that is, what happens if you fall on the floor? How do you get back up, right? So it's really an important skill. And if you look at the Oriental countries, they're actually always getting down and getting back up. So they're very flexible, very strong, very balanced in that way to be able to do those things. So that's just one example. I had a woman come in last year who was in her late 70s, and she had been out for a walk and a dog crossed her path abruptly and it caused her to trip and fall. She lost her balance. She came in asking if we could work on balance, and within 4 weeks she felt strong and secure enough to be able to go for a walk again, no problem. There's things that we can do to work on balance, and the first thing, and flexibility, first thing we have to do is to start working on it, right? So the bad news is those are the first two things to go as we start to age, but the good news is that they're the first two things that we can get back if we just start to work on them, right? Flexibility wise, I'll never forget one of my first clients, gosh, so many years ago, was a male, and he was in his 70s again, and he was very tall. He was taller than I was, probably about 6'5", somewhere in there, and he sat down on the floor to do a stretch where he was reaching towards his toes with his legs out in front of him, and he thought he was doing it. In his mind, he was doing a great job. He had his arms out in front, he was sitting, but the great thing was his shoulders were about this far off the floor. So he was actually laying down, but in his mind, he was sitting straight up, reaching towards his toes. He had no idea. Had to take him into the other room, show him in front of a mirror that, kind of what was happening. And it wasn't meshing in his brain from what he was doing to what he was seeing in the mirror. He couldn't believe that was where he was at. Over a 6-month period, we did get him to where he was sitting up straight and able to at least feel that stretch without the strain on his back trying to hold himself up. And that was pretty impressive. Always fun to get to improve people's lives like that. So over and over and over again, we've had these issues. We'll have people come in and we'll talk goals and things like that. And one of the goals that comes up sometimes is, I just want to be able to tie my shoes, either without losing my breath or without falling over or, without feeling like I'm going to pass out. And a lot of that is just the inflexibility of not being able to do what you need to do. So beginning to work on those things. How do we do that? Well, balance is super easy, right? So balance is easy because all we have to do is step with our feet together. Just stand with your feet together. See how that goes. Maybe it's really easy for you. Great, move on to a harder one. If it's not, practice that until it gets better. The next step would be to close your eyes with your feet together. See how that goes. Always make sure there's something in front of you, a chair or a wall or something that you can kind of tap on. Make sure that you know where you're at so you don't fall down. That's rule number 1 here at the studio, is no falling down. So if you're making sure that you're balanced and everything there, if you feel good there, then open the eyes again and stand on one leg. Do the whole thing again. Practice that. then practice one leg with your eyes closed. Again, you can be holding on. There's no problem with that. That's not affecting the fact that you're not balancing or changing any of that. Just make sure that you're not holding on with a death grip. That if you've got a grocery cart at the grocery store, that you're not squeezing it as tight as you can. You're just barely tapping it, making sure you are balancing on your own feet. And the more you practice that, the better it's going to get. Now, functional balance is a little bit different. You start with those, with the static balances where you're just holding, and then we build it into movement patterns. And that's where having a great training team can help you, because we can create programs that build balance into your program, so that way then you don't even realize you're balancing. You don't even have to really think about it. It's just the fact that it's part of what you're doing already. And those movement patterns are what we call functional training, because now you're training the body to balance in normal everyday situations in movement, which is super important. All right, so flexibility is a little different, right? We can't quite build flexibility into our day quite as easily as we can balance, because we just have to really focus on flexibility. We've got to actually take time to do some stretching and those kinds of things. So whether you're doing some light yoga, or you're just doing basic stretches, or you're just reaching down to see if you can touch your toes, those are all great things to work on. And the more that you can work on that, the better. I recommend that you start out with some stretching first thing in the morning, last thing in the evening. Just remember that if you haven't been doing anything else, if you haven't gone for a walk first or done an exercise program or anything like that, start out kind of gentle and stretch easily into the muscles. Don't make it to where it's on fire or it feels like it's about to tear. Those are bad things. But just nice and gentle to where you feel a stretch, and then hold it for about 30 seconds. So old school thinking was that we bounced, right? We did the butterfly bounces and all that kind of stuff. And if you're bouncing into a stretch, you're going to end up causing harm. So we don't want to do that. We also want to make sure that we're only holding about 30 to 40 seconds, because if you go beyond that, it may feel great, but it's not really doing anything for your flexibility. So at that point, you might as well find a different stretch to do that will still benefit you and feel great, so that you get a little, two for bigger bang for your buck. So working on those stretches is the first part. Then again, building into a functional exercise program where the flexibility becomes part of the program, where we can do things like dynamic movements. Pull, say, your knee up into your chest, or you're walking and kicking your leg, different directions or things like that, to where you're building that flexibility into, again, your movement, so that way then your movement patterns can carry you through your functional every day. So if you need help designing a program that will help to boost your flexibility and balance, we would be happy to do that. Every program that we have has elements of strength, cardiovascular, balance, flexibility, you name it, it's in there. We want to make sure that you have a wholesome program for your whole body that is completely comprehensive and covers everything that you need. And all that workout is done in 30 minutes or less, because we want to make sure that you have time to enjoy the rest of your day, that you're not in the gym or at the studio or at your house focusing on workout for hours upon hours upon hours. So feel free to give us a call, 806-322-3188, and we'd be happy to sit down for a consultation with you. Have a great day.